how do corporations or governments, make use of, the forecasting services you offer?
Okay. Futures appears in strange places, well, in unexpected places and different organizations. So
Hmm.
in the corporate world, you might get them in futurists who work at the innovation level,
Right.
where you bring innovative future thinking into innovation and product development, product prospection level. Or you might use them in the corporate strategy development. So if you think of corporate planning and corporate strategy, future thinking is really giving it's almost pre-strategy work of saying how might the world flex and how might we do things within it. And so that then feeds back to your strategy.
Hmm.
So those are a couple of places that it occurs. A futurist is also an interesting foil. They work with leaders in organizations, because often as an external futurist, you have a permission to think differently that the organization doesn't necessarily have.
Hmm.
So you can say something. you can talk to a company and say, well, really, your core product won't be needed in 10 years' time.
Right.
What does that mean to you? What does that mean to you? Yeah, but and the interesting thing, or the interesting function that futures thinking plays in management teams is to allow them to work together, because you take a team out 10 years into the future,
Hmm.
and everyone's on a ground they're not familiar with. So they start to learn to work together and also trial new possibilities out, and they can learn how to work on something else that occurs. They learn to be agile. The idea of being able to work with something new that happens. So if for example, you did a futures work on dealing with an aging population,
Right.
for example, how would you cope with that? Say a government is dealing with that problem, and then in a couple of years' time, there was an epidemic, for example, which gave a lot of large-scale healthcare problems to a high proportion of the population.
Hmm.
Some of the learnings that you had from that exercise you did about the aging population can be applied in a different context. And also, rather than getting caught up in debates of the what and the how, the team can get on and do things together. So it's also acts as a way for teams can develop themselves. It's a tool in psychological preparation as well, because effectively, when you think about multiple futures, you're war gaming in a way with the possible future.
Right. Interesting. And I guess maybe to bring this home again to the individual, how can learning about futurism or developing a better sense of how to think about the future, how can that help, the individual better plan their lives?
I like the idea of signal and noise.
Hmm.
Okay, you've got. I find that futurists can throw up a lot of ideas about the future that can take energy away from doing something as opposed to focus it.
Right.
So I think first, futurists. Just a bit of background. You and I understand that futurists are not focused on prediction. It's about possibility, because we understand the future can flex in different ways. So for the individual, it allows you to say, not just plan on one future, to say the things could change, but not to get phased by that, not just look at one future, look at 2 or 3 possibilities and then be able to work out different strategies for them.
Right.
Signal versus noise is really being more critical about what you're being told.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the big fuss around augmented reality and virtual reality is quite interesting here. If I use an example,
right.
We're seeing a lot of it around the consumer space. It's an extension of gaming, for example, and yet some of the best applications for this are potentially in the industrial world, for helping in healthcare and for helping in engineering projects. So it's not just accepting a trend, but thinking it through accepting one idea, but thinking it through in different contexts. So for an individual, it allows you to not get not your energy not to get too dispersed, but also
Mhm.
to allow you to think of the implications of something in a different space.